The final Conjuring movie has just released in theaters this weekend, so does it live up to the hype? Let's talk about that right now. What's up, you guys? It's Jonathan Carter, and today we are talking about The Conjuring Last Rites. The original 2013 Conjuring is one of my favorite horror films of all time. I believe that movie is a modern horror masterpiece, and that it is one of the best horror films of all time. I've talked about it a lot on my channel before. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of horror. The 1970s Shining movie being my favorite movie of all time, not even just my favorite horror movie, but just of all time favorite movie. I am a huge fan of horror, but with that, I'm also a really big critic of horror because I love the genre so much. So with The Conjuring Last Rites being announced as being the last Conjuring film, at least starring Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as Ed and Lorraine Warren, who have been playing these characters for over a decade, there is a lot of weight that goes into this film, but also a lot of hype, right? Because you do want it to be good, you want it to wrap up their story, but because it's announced and marketed as the last Conjuring film, at least starring these two characters, there is a lot that goes into it because you want it. Again, it's not just another Conjuring sequel, it is their last one, and that just puts a whole lot, it puts the movie up a ladder, a rung, because you want it to be good. And before we kick off this review, please be sure to like and subscribe, you guys. Check me out on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify for podcast versions of reviews. And before we get into this, let me know your thoughts on The Conjuring Last Rites in the comments below. I'll have a ranking at the end of this video of the 4 mainline Conjuring movies. Also, if you're up for the challenge, put your ranking in the comments, or if you want to do the entire universe, put that ranking in the comments as well. Without further ado, does The Conjuring Last Rites live up to the hype? Let's talk about all of that with the review. Right off the bat, The Conjuring Last Rites is the strongest this series has been since the original 2013 The Conjuring. Is it a perfect movie that reaches the ultimate highs of the original 2013 film? No. But it gets pretty darn close, you guys. The film kicks off in 1964 with a very narrative-driven flashback of a young Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by different actors, that explains exactly what's going to happen in this movie, what The Conjuring Last Rites is going to be about, but without giving too much away. And I'm not going to go into spoilers, but it does deal with Ed and Lorraine's pregnancy of their daughter Judy and how that's going to kind of set up what exactly this last Conjuring film is going to be about. From there, we jump to 1986, 16 years after the original Conjuring film, with a story that packs an absolute punch. That follows another family, a haunted house film, just like the original 2 Conjuring films, in Westonson, Pennsylvania, as they are haunted by this absolutely terrifying demon. With that, for the majority of this film, the Warrens are kind of off on the side with their own storyline that deals with their family, specifically their daughter Judy, who is now an adult. She's not a kid anymore. It's been 16 years since the original Conjuring film. And that storyline follows essentially Judy growing up, having this blossoming relationship with this boyfriend, and simultaneously deals with the Warrens aging, wanting to retire, not really go into this line of work anymore. And also it shapes how the world, now set in the 80s, how the world sees them. They don't really people don't take their work that seriously anymore, kind of mocking them instead, calling them something closer to Ghostbusters. Ouch. The storyline of the family being terrorized in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, does come with the exact type of scares you would expect from the Conjuring franchise. You know, horrifying, malevolent, just plain evil spirits that want to do harm to people in the real world. And you guys, this movie does harken back to the original Conjuring film of these just like super intense scares that will straight up have you saying, I'm not sleeping tonight.
Something I've felt before.
Michael, the director of this movie, Why would you make it so terrifying? And yeah, last night after seeing this movie, I didn't sleep very well. I was genuinely scared. But on the other hand, the Warren story that's running parallel to the family in Pennsylvania actually comes with more heart than you would expect from a Conjuring film. There are moments with the Warren family that are just so touching that actually might make you cry. There were a few like teary eyes in the theater, the sold-out theater I was in last night, but then also such funny moments that have you laughing out loud, specifically with Ed and Judy's boyfriend. Just kind of the way that they play off of each other, and these humorous and also heartfelt moments are so well balanced, and they come off as breaths of fresh air in this movie that packs solid jump scares around every single corner. However, where the movie stumbles is combining these two storylines, or lack thereof of combining them naturally. In kind of a shocking turn of events for the Conjuring movies, the Warrens don't actually meet with this family in Pennsylvania face to face until the third act of the film. So for this 2-hour and 15-minute movie, I would say 80% of it are the Warrens on one side in their storyline, and then the family being haunted on the other side of the movie, and they're just running parallel to each other without ever really intersecting for a very long time. By the time they meet towards the end of the film, the movie has to wrap up the story so quickly that you don't get touching moments of the Warrens comforting the family or lifting up their spirits, giving them confidence, reassurance that is so prominent in especially the first two Conjuring films. And that is the biggest fault of The Conjuring Last Rites. It never truly decides what it wants to be about during its runtime. It has a true identity crisis. It can't choose if it wants to be a haunted house story about this helpless family in Pennsylvania, or if it wants to be this touching story about the Warrens that wraps up their entire saga over these 4 Conjuring films, plus X amount of spin-offs that, I'm sorry, I have not seen.
You need to leave!
Don't get me wrong, both stories are told immaculately well, but they just never seamlessly mesh into something that feels like a complete and cohesive film. For that sole reason, The Conjuring Last Rites is a bit of an odd movie to review. Because how do you fairly review a movie that has 2 stories that run separately from each other, but they're both told so incredibly well, but they just don't make a solid film because they don't really come together at the end. From a filmmaking perspective, the movie looks fantastic. It is Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson turn in solid performances like they have across all 4 of these movies. That incredibly haunting and unsettling score of especially the first 2 Conjuring movies is back here in the 4th one, but it is missing a little bit of that James Wan magic that makes the original Conjuring film a true, like I said, modern horror masterpiece. So the verdict, if you are a fan of the Conjuring movies, you will enjoy this one. It does wrap up the Warren story very nicely, and without getting into spoilers, there are some fun cameos in here, but it never comes together as its own movie. It just wraps up the universe instead of being a very solid movie on its own. So for that, it's really tough to score and review. And if I had to rank the movies from worst to best, number 4 would be The Conjuring 2. I feel like while The Nun is really terrifying in that movie, that story is rather dull and bloated. Third, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. That movie is definitely a step up from the second Conjuring, but it comes off more of like a mystery film than like a Conjuring film. In a sense, it feels a little detached from the universe. Second would be the newest Conjuring, Last Rites. It is a very solid wrap-up to this series. And then, of course, in first place would be the original Conjuring. I truly love that movie. All that being said, I'm gonna give The Conjuring Last Rites a 7.5 out of 10. If you are a fan of this series, go see it. If you can wait, check it out on streaming, but definitely check it out either way. Don't skip this one. And with that being said, let me know your thoughts on The Conjuring Last Rites in the comments. Did you love the movie? Did you hate it? What did you think about my review? Please be sure to like and subscribe, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I will see you guys on the next video.